Hello students, welcome to Trunkie Academy. We are studying about the heredity and evolutions, and in that we studied about yesterday about the heredity and the Mendel's experiment. And while studying Mendel's experiment, we studied about the monohybrid cross and dihybrid cross. But since the time was over yesterday, so I will explain a little bit again about the dihybrid cross, because yesterday it was not fully completed. Okay, so dihybrid cross means, as I told you yesterday, it is a cross between the parents, which where we are considering the two characters. Okay, and I told you why Mendel tried to conduct this dihybrid cross after conducting the monohybrid cross, because he wanted to know that whether the two characters, like curly hairs and the fair skin, the black skin and the fair skin and the straight hair, are they always going together or they are independent of each other or not. So he wanted to conduct this carry out this experiment dihybrid cross. So he was conducting the experiment on pea plant. Okay, so he has chosen about the round green seeds, okay, and the wrinkled yellow seeds. That was the dominant and recessive character. So in parent generation or P1 generation, he chose the P1 generation, means parent generation. Okay, so he chose round green seeds, round green seeds, and then he, in the recessive side, it was the wrinkled yellow seeds. Okay, so now after crossing, the gametes were formed. The gametes that were formed was as, because this was R as a this was RRY. This the green was the recessive, and here it was the small r wrinkled was the recessive, and yellow was the dominant. Okay, so then he crossed. Okay, so gametes formed was the RY, and in case of this, he got the RY. Okay, so this was the types of gamete formed. So when these were crossed, try to understand this. He crossed between the round, that is the dominant, okay, green, that is the recessive, so round green, okay, and the wrinkled yellow, means the wrinkled was the recessive and the yellow was the dominant. And in the generation, the first filial generation, then he found about the R Y Y. Okay, so this was the F1 generation. Okay, so this got means round yellow, round yellow. Okay, now so then he crossed between the these. Okay, so what I did is, for example, if we are getting the in F1 selfing, so selfing means between the cross between the F1 generation. Okay, selfing. F1 gametes, selfing F1 gametes. So what did he found? It was there. So it was that, like we will draw on the checkers board, you can say, like this. Okay. So yeah, again. So gametes formed where are Y, okay, and R, Y, R, capital Y, small y. Here again, capital R, capital Y, capital Y, capital Y, and capital R, capital R, capital Y, and small y, and capital R, small y, capital Y, and capital R, small r, capital Y, small y. Because here also we'll find the capital R, capital Y, capital R, Y, small r, capital Y, and small r, small y. So this is this small r, small r, small r, small r, small r. This will be there. Okay. Here you can see capital R, capital R. Okay. Then capital Y and the small y. Okay. Here in case of capital R, small y, small y. Here in capital R, small r. Then we have got the capital Y and small y. Here we have got the capital R, small r, and the then we have got small y, small y. Then again we have got this capital R, small r, capital Y, and capital Y. Capital R, small r, then the capital Y, and the small y. Then we have got a small r, Y, capital Y, and again here the small r, capital Y, and the small y. Here again we have got the capital R, small r, the capital Y, and small y. Capital R, small y, small y, small r, capital Y, small y. So this was the how he found. Now we see there was okay round yellow. So what he found is okay there was F1 generation contains hybrid conditions. Okay, so in F1 generation it was 100% hybrid. Okay, so that was heterozygous. Whatever the phenotypes were expected, that was the heterozygous. Okay, heterozygous phenotype. Now, because there was the formation of gametes is like this, so there was the ratio was 9:3:1. So we found that wrinkled yellow, wrinkled green was one. Okay, so it was the round yellow is to round yellow is to then round green is to wrinkled yellow is to wrinkled green. Okay, so this was the 9:3:1. Okay, so in F2 generation he found 9:3:1 ratio. It is very complex one because he knew that it's not that only which has got a wrinkled surface or wrinkled seed will have the green color. It's not like that. The wrinkled will have the yellow color also. So this proves that it's not both the characters are not passing one generation to the second generation or one generation to another generation together. So this was his observation. Okay. Now we'll study about the evolution. So another topic is the evolution. Okay, this is the important topic. Questions are asked. Okay. Now first we'll start with the basic idea of evolution. Evolution. Okay. So first is the first basic idea. No, not like this. English test. I'll tell you. Okay. We know that, and you have already heard of that evolution term, about the evolution term, and what is some idea you have in while studying in previous classes in 7, 8, 9, 7, 8. you have come across this term evolution. Evolution is actually uh, is a kind of process, very slow process, okay, where new species arises from the pre-existing. Okay, scientists and the researchers have done intensive studies to show that how living things or living organisms evolve, and how traits and characteristics passed from one generation to another. So they have the scientists, the geologists, botanists, okay, and the researchers have done so many experiments, okay, and so many studies they have done, researches they have done, and to show that how the organisms have evolved, and also the transmission of the features, characters from one generation to another, and how it passed from one generation to another, and that may lead to some kind of variation, and these variations lead to evolution. Okay, so ultimately, when we speak of evolution, we actually speak of genetic characteristics, because these forms the basis of evolution. When we are talking about the evolution, actually we are talking about the genetic characteristics, okay, that are inherited and passed from one generation to another. Okay, because what happens when there is a kind of change in the organisms, when the organisms are evolving, it is only because of the the characters are passing from one generation to another, and that is being changed due to adaptation or due to some modifications. Okay, and then the new species are evolving, or some evolution of this species taking place. The whole process of evolution gives rise to biodiversity at all levels. Okay, because we know that there are in case of the sexual reproduction, there are mixing of gametes, and this causes the recombination. Okay, and due to this recombinations, what happened, a new kind of variations is observed in the progenies, in the offspring, and that forms the basis for the evolutions. Okay, so the whole no the an important basis, that means an important aspect, is that when there is a change in the progeny, or when there is variation in the progeny, okay, or when the characters are being transmitted from one generation, or from passing from one generation to other, okay, and this is causing some variations, or when the organisms are getting adapted to our new changing environment, or they are moving from one place to another place, and they are changing themselves, or they are adapting according to their habitat, new habitat, or the changing environment, okay, that leads to the evolution. Okay, one of the important theory on which evolution is based on is that all species are related and gradually change over time. That means evolution is still going on. Okay, it's not that when you start sitting in front of a in a forest, and you keep on looking from right from the early morning and in the evening, and you see some changes in the trees or in some animals. It's not like that. It is a very, very slow process, and we have the lifespan of maximum 80 or 90 years, or just say 100 years, or more than that we no one survives, right? So it's not that in 100 years also it is not observable. It takes millions of years to a new change to come, a new species to evolve. Okay, so though the evolution is going on, but it's not easily observable, because we get some evidences, we get some scientific evidences. Okay, based on that we can conclude that evolution is going on, but it is not visible, because it's very, very, very slow process. Okay. Okay, so what happens, gradually the species are gradually changing over time. Okay, and this is the evolution actually. So, but the frequency of an inherited trait that undergoes a change is spread over generations. Okay, any change in the frequency of the inherited trait, okay, that undergo the changes in the population, genes that control the traits, okay, that may be changed. Okay, and depending on the environment, depending on the habitat in which the living organisms are living, okay, and they are reproducing for new generation, there may be change in the gene, or there may be change in the trait. Okay, and this cause the evolution. Okay. Now first we'll say acquired and inherited character. Okay, we'll study about the acquired and inherited character. Acquired traits are the qualities that are developed in the individual in response to certain conditions in the environment. I told you in the beginning of this chapter when I started teaching this chapter a day before yesterday that when we say acquired character means the character that has been acquired during the lifetime of the individual. Okay, it is not inherited from parents. Okay, for example, the boring of the ear pinna, or making a hole, a small hole for the earrings, that is not passed from the mother to the child. Okay, so that is the acquired character. Okay, now similarly there are some other characters. Okay, which is the behavior. So this is the according to environment. For example, if some organisms or some animals, okay, they are behaving to a particular environment in a particular manner, so that is due to that particular environment. If the environment is very cold, if their habitat is very cold and they are responding in a particular way, that is because of the low temperature. Okay, it is not that again it will be same in case of the progeny. Okay, so they are learning and they are adapting and they are changing their behavior, their response to the environment. So that is the acquired. Okay, this cannot be transmitted to the progenies because this is acquired during the lifetime. It's not genetic, it's not genomic. The gene is not controlled by the genes, so they only help in organism to survive. Okay, and therefore they do not direct evolution, so they do not have any role in evolution because these genes, or you can say these acquired characters, are only to adapt and to facilitate their living in the particular environment, but do not play or do not have any role in their in the evolution. Okay, so that is there, and example include like plants due to wind, okay, and the calluses and the fingers. So plant bends due to blowing of high speed wind. The plants are bending, so that is temporary, and they bend, if it has bent permanently also. It doesn't mean that the new generation of that plant will also be bent, because the bending of that plant was due to the blowing of the high speed blowing of the wind, and that caused the bending of the plant. So there are so many different examples are like this. Okay, what happens when we are coloring our hairs, okay, with some dyes. So it doesn't mean that the color is changed and the new progeny will also have the changed color. So there are so many examples, like the making holes in the ear pinna or boring of the ear. So that is also the example of acquired characters. Okay, so these are about the acquired. Now we come to another important point, that is the speciation. Speciation means the formation of new species from the existing one. Okay, that is speciation. So this is also very important for the exam. Speciation means a new species is being born. And what do you mean by species? That I think already discussed in some topic. Okay, but once again I am repeating because this is most important concept. What is species? Species are some group of organisms, okay, that are reproductively isolated from other such a group, because they are interbreeding among themselves only, but they are not able to mate, or they are not able to breed with other species, because maybe due to the incompatible genitalia or external genitalia which is not compatible, or even somehow they forcefully they try to mating, okay, but the gametes will not be compatible and the gametes will not fertilize each other, and there will be no formation of zygote. Okay, even some very closely related, very closely related species are mated, okay, and we forcefully be mated with one another, okay, with the male and female, and if somehow since being too close species, there has been a kind of fertilization, but that will not be viable, and that will the zygote will not going to produce the embryo. So that is called reproductive isolation. So here our main point is that the species means the species are reproductively isolated from other such a group. So the species means the group of organisms are okay, which are interbreeding and they are reproductively isolated. They are not going to reproduce with another species. So human beings can reproduce among themselves only. Okay, that is not possible with the other species. Okay, so lion will breed with the lion only, and the tiger will breed with the tiger only, and the dog will breed with the dogs only. Okay, and thus we see that this is due to the reproductive isolation. So this reproductive isolation is the actually defining the species. So when a new species formed, okay, so if a species is changing, okay, and is formed a new species, that new species will no longer be able to mate with the previous existing species because it has changed. It's a totally changed, and it will be not be compatible for reproduction. Okay, both as the external genitalia and also the incompatible gametes that they will produce during the gamete formation. Okay, so that is the reason when it is called reproductively isolated, means it is a one particular type of species. So formation of new species from the existing is called speciation. The species which is already existing, okay, from that existing species, a new species is formed, evolved. That is they call the speciation, the process of speciation. Okay, so here a single evolutionary lineage splits up into two or more genetically independent lineage. What happens? For example, I'll tell you, there is one kind of species A. This is species A. Okay, from species A, okay, some group of members, they migrated and they moved to a certain places. Okay, and another remained there, or again they went to some other places, and this group of individuals again they got adapted and they formed a new species. Whereas another one that went to up, okay, to higher altitudes, and they got adapted and they changed themselves. Okay, so both of these, so this will be like a species B, this will be species B and species C. So A, B, C, all are three different species now, because the species B is they evolved from species A. Okay, pre-existing. So it can be more than two lineage, or more than one lineage, or more than two lineage. Okay, so it may be possible that from the species A only species B is evolving. It may be possible that from species A, B, and C, or also D is evolving. So that depends on the situation. That it depends on the type of the the situation and the environment, habitat, the migration of the animals, availability of the food. Okay, there are there are the what we call the comfort, or you can say the easy way of the reproductions, or the availability of their the situations of the mating. Okay, and so many other factors are there that decides whether a species will give rise to three species, new species, or give rise to two new species. Okay, so there may be more than one or two lineages. Okay, and independent lineages will form a new species. This is the how new species is formed. Okay, now this is about this occurrence of this new speciation is due to the some important reasons. Okay, so that reasons are, the first one is the genetic drift. Okay, so what is genetic drift? This is important for exam, and also when you go to higher classes, this will be very, very important. So we will say genetic drift. A random change in the frequency of alleles over successive generations. Now, what is this change in the frequency of alleles? Means the occurrence of the frequency of occurrence. Okay, so gene frequency, change in the frequency of alleles. Okay, so over successive generations. So after generation, there is change in the frequency of alleles. So that is the that can cause the evolution and the formation of new species. So a random change, this is the genetic drift. A random change in the frequency of allele over successive generations in population. Okay, in a population. Now comes to the gene flow. Now that means there is a random change in the frequency of alleles. Okay, for example, we are talking about there is sudden change in the alleles. Okay, in that trait, in the character. There is some change in the alleles, or you can say the alleles, or the, for example, the capital T or small t, and then we have got the some kind of the genes that control the free lobe or attached lobe. Okay, so alleles, there is the alleles for controlling this character. So there is sudden change. Okay, there is a random change. Okay, random change in the alleles and in the frequency of alleles. Okay, over successive generation in a population. That is one of the cause, one of the reason for this new speciation or speciation. Okay, another is a gene flow. Means from one generation to another generation there is a flow of genes. So we will see this as the speciation occurs between populations which are partly separated but not completely separated. So gene flow also plays an important role. Okay, gene flow. Okay, now the speciation, the speciation occurs between populations which are partly separated but not completely separated, but not completely separated. Okay, that means then some kind of migration took place, and they are some of the members of the populations have migrated. Okay, or that they are nearby, but there is no much interaction. Okay, and due to this, they are partly separated but not completely separated. This will also cause speciation because the gene flow will not be in a normal manner, like we have seen in case of population confined in an area. Gene flow from one generation to another generation will be in a particular manner. Okay, then is the natural selection. Another force is the natural selection, or another factor for the speciation is the natural selection. The nature selects. Okay, nature selects and consolidates those organisms which are more suitable and adaptable. Okay, for example, some progenies, offsprings were produced from one generation. Okay, from one parent generation, and if they are not able to adapt in a particular changing environment and a particular changing habitat, then they will be eliminated. They will not be able to survive. They are not going to produce another generation. If they produce also the third generation, maybe slowly they may get extinct, because some animals and plants, they have become extinct on the basis of the natural selection. If the animals are adapted, they have changed, they have modified, some modification has taken place according to the changing environment, according to the changing habitat, and they have some developed some kind of modifications depending on the new habitat, and they are well adapted to face and live in, and sustain themselves in the changing environment and the new environment or in the new habitat. Then the nature will select, and they will live, be living, and they will continue their existence, and the new generation will continue to produce. Okay, baby. Okay, so that is the natural selection. So natural selection, nature selects and consolidates. So nature selects and consolidates. Selects and consolidates. Consolidates. Okay. Those organisms organisms which are more suitable, which are more suitable and adaptable. Adaptable. Okay, that means they are going to select the organisms who are fit, okay, fit for surviving. So they also poses very favorable. So these are animals or these populations or these organisms, they pose they sorry also possess various favorable variation. So they favorable variations. These variations help them to adapt in the environment. Okay. If the favorable variations do not persist, if the favorable variations is not produced, okay, if there is no modifications and the variations are not observed, okay, then the nature will not select and they may be extinct. Okay. So that so another third factor I told you, this is for the speciation or the new formation of new species is the natural selection. Now another is the geographical isolation. So geographical isolation. Geographical isolation. Okay. This is caused by mountains, rivers, and other geographical barriers. Geographical barriers. For example, there was some kind of flood, or there was some kind of earthquake, or some kind of natural calamities due to which our group of population gets separated, and they then started getting adapted and get undergoing some kind of changes and modifications and variations. Then they will form a new species. Okay, from the so that is the due to this is caused due to this is caused by mountains, rivers, and other geographical feature, other geographical feature, barriers or geographical features. Okay, this form of this form of isolation leads to reproductive isolation. Leads to reproductive isolation. Okay. As a result, there is no flow of genes. There is no flow of genes in the separated groups. In the separated groups, of the population of the population. Okay. Now try to understand this point. Okay, geographical barrier or geographical isolation. Okay, and geographical some kind of for example, some of the animals they were migrating. There was some they migrating together, but there was some kind of natural calamities that separated the population into two groups. Okay, or there was kind of some kind of other things that led to the isolation or the separation of the a group of individuals from the population. Okay, this will lead to reproductive isolation. Why? Because they are no longer mating with the other group. Okay, they are mating among themselves. Okay, and they are on a new environment and they are changing slowly. Then the group the two groups from the same population will develop into a new they will have a new kind of variation, and this will lead to new species. So this is also due to this geographical isolation also leads to reproductive isolation. Okay, so these are the important reasons or the factors that leads to speciation. Okay, so I told you that this is genetic drift, random change in the frequency, allele frequency. Okay, the random change in the population. There is some kind of in sexual reproduction. This is the common phenomenon. Genetic drift occurs and over successive populations. Okay, after generation, we see that there is a random change in the frequency of alleles or allele frequency. Now, gene flow speciation occurs between population in which the partly separated but not completely separated. And I told you natural selection. Nature selects and consolidates those organisms only which are more suitable and adaptable in a particular changing environment or a particular changing habitat. So there has to be some favorable variations. So that means which are able to adapt, and they are they are having some kind of modifications to be completely adapted in the particular environment, means they are having favorable variations. So the variations that are coming in the generation after generations are favorable, so are they adapted well, and the nature selects. Okay, and in case of geographical isolation, it is the kind of isolation where there is a barriers between the two groups of populations, and here we find that the two groups of the same population, they are not able to meet again, and both the groups, okay, of the same population, they are going to form a new species. Okay, so this was all about the speciation, and then tomorrow we'll study about the another topic. Okay, so after this class, as I have told you several times, okay, every day, now I'm repeating it once again, that you have to go to your academic booster where you find the link called resources, and then you click on the writing material and click on the DPP. Okay, and download the topic that we have studied today, DPP, and then you go through the questions and answer those questions and send back to us for the evaluations. Okay, so we'll check that those answers and send a remark. And so this much for today, and tomorrow again, not tomorrow, tomorrow is the Sunday, so day after tomorrow on Monday we'll meet again at the same time. And so thank you for joining and listening today, and now you will meet again day after tomorrow. So thank you for listening, and we will meet again. So till then, goodbye and take